Today's case is one of the strangest disappearances in modern history. A case with cameras, witnesses, timelines, evidence, and still no answers. On April 1st, 2006, a medical student walked into a bar and was never seen again. No confirmed sighting and no clue as to how he left the bar with only one entrance and multiple cameras watching. This is the story of Brian Shaffer. Hi, I'm Natasha,
And I'm Cassandra.
and this is Strange Sisters. And we're going to switch things up a little bit this week. We're going to try kind of a bit of a different format. So I'm going to try to get through the whole story, just, providing clarification as needed. And then we'll chat about the case after that. And you will notice we are still off camera. We are having an array of technical difficulties. So hopefully our audio is a little bit better today. Yeah, we're trying to figure things out. Hopefully by like mid-December we'll have a better system going. But in the meantime, we'll just be doing audio. Anything you want to add, Cassandra?
Nope, and I've never heard about this story, so I'm intrigued.
Yeah, given that it wasn't that long ago, so there was like cameras and seemingly there should have been no way for him to get out of this building. He has never been seen again, as I mentioned, so it's a very unusual case. Right, well, I guess we'll go ahead and get into it then.
Sounds good.
So, this was supposed to be a celebratory night out. Early on the morning of April 1st, 2006, 27-year-old Brian Shaffer and his friend William Clint Florence were wrapping up a long night out. They had just finished their final exams at Ohio State College of Medicine, so they were obviously exhausted because that's a
Yeah.
lot. And spring break had officially begun. They started their evening at Ugly Tuna Saloona, which is such a funny name, a campus area bar known for loud music, cheap drinks, and its location in a part of Columbus that is known for crime. They hit a few bars, they had a few drinks, and near the end of the night, Clint's friend Meredith Reed picked them up and drove them back to where they had started, the Ugly Tuna. As last call approached, the three gathered for a final round. Somewhere in this window, somewhere between like the music, the drinks, and the chaos of a closing bar, Brian got separated from his friends. And so when the bar closed at 2 a.m., Clint and Meredith waited outside for him. They thought, well, he'll just come out. Maybe he went to the bathroom or something. So they waited and waited, but Brian never came out. Assuming he'd grabbed a ride home or had simply slipped out without telling them, they left. I mean, it's a little weird, but who knows? Maybe he met someone. He was dating someone, just to throw that in there, but maybe he saw a different friend and they left together. So it wasn't until Monday morning when Brian failed to show up for a flight to Miami with his girlfriend that anyone realized that something terrible had happened and Brian was missing. So let's back up and learn a little bit about Brian. Brian grew up in Pickerington, Ohio, I think is how you say it, a suburb outside of Columbus, so he was familiar with the area, and he was the elder son of Randy and Renee Shaffer. He graduated from the local high school in 1997 and went to Ohio State University for his undergraduate work. 6 years later, he had graduated with a degree in microbiology, and following that, he began studies at OSU College of Medicine in 2004. During his second year there, in March 2006, his mother died of myelodysplasia, which is a type of blood cancer. And so, obviously, that was completely devastating. But Brian's friend said that although he appeared to be handling it well, of course, her death was very hard on him. Um, Given that our mom has leukemia, we can definitely relate to that. And it's a very difficult thing to go through. Luckily, she is still with us. But yeah, it's a lot for a family to process. So he was doing the best he could. I mean, I'm sure being a doctor, he kind of understood it, unfortunately, better than a lot of average people, or he was studying to be a doctor, which I would think makes it maybe even a little bit more difficult. So during his time at medical school, Brian had become romantically involved with another medical student named Alexis Wagoner. She, along with their families and friends, believed that Brian would probably be proposing marriage to her later in 2006, Most likely on a trip to Miami the couple had planned for spring break at the beginning of April. So this is right around the time that he disappeared. Everyone was thinking, oh, this is going to be it. They're going on a trip to Miami. They're going to get engaged. And tropical locations like Miami attracted Brian. He liked the relaxed lifestyle. He told his friends that despite his decision to pursue a medical career, his real ambition was to start a band playing music in the vein of Jimmy Buffett. So, not sure why he was going to medical school in the first place, but that was his ultimate dream. Maybe that was like his retirement plan.
Yeah.
And on March 31st, which was a Friday, classes at OSU ended for spring break. Brian and his father, Randy, celebrated the occasion by having a steak dinner earlier that evening. Brian's dad noted that he seemed exhausted from having studied through the night earlier in the week cramming for some critical upcoming exams, which of course. So Randy could see that his son needed some rest and didn't think he should go out that night, but he didn't mention that to his son.
Tragically, that would be the last time that Randy ever saw his son, as he disappeared just a few hours later.
So, police began their investigation exactly where Brian was last seen, at the Ugly Tuna Saloona. Because of the area's reputation, the bar was equipped with numerous security cameras, including one directly facing the escalator leading to the entrance. The footage showed Brian at 1:55 a.m. standing outside the bar's entrance, chatting with two women. Then, moments later, cameras captured him turning and walking back into the bar. So this was right around when the bar was closing, because the bar closed at 2. His friends came out of the bar at 2. So within like 5 minutes, basically, he just disappeared.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's crazy how quickly things like that can happen. And so this was the last confirmed visual of Brian Shaffer alive, was at 1:55 a.m. There was only one public entrance or exit, and every person who came in or out of that bar was caught on camera. Again, because of the area, they had a lot of cameras. So every person was accounted for except Brian.
So there was only one public entrance. Did they say if there were like back doors for like the bartenders or?
Yeah, I'll get into that in just a
Okay.
second. There is, but it's definitely not an ideal way to go out. So he never appears leaving, not by the escalator, he's not slipping past the crowds. And some people thought, oh, maybe he left in like a disguise, but I mean, they studied the tapes and there was no evidence of him leaving in a disguise. Police examined footage from neighboring businesses as well, and they found no sign of him leaving the building. So that leads to a strange possibility, which is, did Brian never leave the bar at all?
Ugh.
Now, like you mentioned, there is a back door. So this was like a service exit, but it led directly into a dangerous construction site with like rebar and debris and jagged metal, and it was a pretty hazardous area that police felt even a sober person would struggle to navigate safely in daylight, let alone at night.
Yeah.
So Brian, after a long night of drinking, would have been at extreme risk. And then in that case, they would have found him, right? Because he,
Yeah.
was would have been in the site. The cameras in that area could have possibly missed Schaefer. One panned across the area constantly, and another was operated manually. So that's kind of an interesting theory. I don't know exactly who was operating that camera, but if it was some kind of malicious thing where I don't know, they get people from the back of bars for something nefarious, maybe the camera that operated manually was moved and they knew when the window would be. That's the only thing I could think of.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But even then, I mean, there's stuff everywhere. It would be very hard to navigate. And if there was an accident, then that would leave behind evidence like blood, clothing. The site was searched thoroughly, and cadaver dogs also combed the area, and they didn't find anything, which I personally trust cadaver dogs. Their smell is just so much better than ours. Police widened the search to dumpsters, sewers, riverbanks, nearby properties, and still nothing. And they even had the cadaver and the canine units searching those areas as well, and they couldn't pick up a trace either. So it was like Brian had just vanished into thin air, basically. Brian's apartment was later burglarized, so his family was hopeful, kind of in a weird way, that the crime might be connected to his disappearance, like maybe there was a clue, a motive, or something. But unfortunately, it doesn't appear that they were connected, which is just really awful. And his father, Randy, who was newly widowed after the recent death of his wife and Brian's mom, was absolutely desperate for answers, of course. In a moment of grief and hope, he turned to a psychic, which depends on where you stand on those things, but I think unfortunately a lot of those people take advantage of people that are in desperate situations. The psychic claimed that Brian's body was in water near a bridge. There was a river nearby, so Randy spent hours wading through the Alantangi River, just searching, hoping he would find something. But again, nothing. No evidence showed up. So, of course, Alexis Wagner, his girlfriend, was also absolutely devastated. It seemed like they were heading towards marriage, and then Brian just completely disappeared. And for months, she would call his phone every night. The call went straight to voicemail, but just the anticipation that maybe he would pick up like that, you know, kind of kept her going during those really dark times. And so, like I said, every night the call just would go straight to voicemail. Until one night in September, the phone rang 3 times.
Oh.
So she immediately called back. She's like, oh my God, maybe someone found his phone or something. But when she called back, it went straight to voicemail again. And so a ping from the call was traced to a cell tower in Hilliard, which is 14 miles away. So then they're thinking, had Brian turned his phone on or had someone else turned his phone on? But the carrier later admitted that the ring and the tower ping might have been a glitch, a phantom connection in the system, basically. Unfortunately, there was no way to know for sure. This was about 20 years ago, so technology was a little bit different back then. But that's a very unfortunate situation because it gave her, everyone, a little bit of hope, and then it was just unfortunately taken away.
Oh.
So we're left with, okay, what could have possibly happened? Almost everyone connected with Brian took a polygraph. Everyone except Clint Florence, the friend that he was out with that night. So that's weird.
So is there a reason why he did it? What, like, because he wasn't like a suspect, or that's strange?
Yeah, so through his attorney, Clint claimed that he had nothing to hide and that he had already told police all that he could. So I guess police just didn't force the issue. I mean, a polygraph is also generally not admissible in court, from what I understand. So I think it's more of a method of getting people to then kind of force a confession, it seems like. The two women that Brian spoke to outside the bar were also later identified and cleared. So then they're basically back at ground zero. They've interviewed everyone. They have no suspects. They have no people of interest. Brian just walked into a bar and he never came out. It's a very strange situation. But Brian's father refused to let the case fade. He fought tirelessly for answers. He posted flyers. He spoke with police, push legislation to reform how Ohio handles missing person cases. He was really doing everything he possibly could to find his son. And his efforts led to a more organized, modern protocol, which is great and has helped countless families since then, but unfortunately, it has not really helped him. Randy never found the closure that he sought. Unfortunately, in 2008, he died tragically after being struck by a falling branch during a windstorm. It's just devastating. And then you also think that Brian had a brother. So at this point, he has no family, basically. Like, his mom passed, his dad passed, his brother is missing, presumed dead. Like, he lost everyone within the span of a few years. And this led to a very bizarre twist. In an online condolence book for Randy, someone wrote, "To Dad, love Brian, U.S. Virgin Islands," which is
Okay.
very strange. Of course, that message instantly reignited hope and suspicion because you're like, well, who is this? You would think that if it were really Brian, he would reach out to his brother and not just write in a condolence book online.
And how would like he even know his dad died if he's been hiding from everybody?
Yeah, I guess if you read the newspaper, I don't know. So, investigators traced the post to a public computer in Franklin County, Ohio, and it was just, they think, a cruel hoax.
That's awful.
So, another dead end there. With no evidence, no sighting, and no answers, theories run wild on this one. Some believe that Brian intentionally walked away from his life. He joked about playing in a Jimmy Buffett style band on a beach somewhere, and maybe spring break was his breaking point, basically. Like, he was exhausted from exams, and he was like, I just can't do this anymore. And so, some people think he just ran away. And one of the original investigators, Andre Edwards, told Columbus Monthly that after an extensive review of the camera footage at the Ugly Tuna Saloona from the night Shaffer disappeared, which was intended to rule out the idea that he could have left in disguise, he could say with 100% certainty that Brian did not leave via the escalator. So like I said earlier, they thought maybe he left in a disguise. They very closely looked at the footage and just they can say with 100% certainty that that was not the case. Others point to grief. Brian had lost his mom to cancer just 3 weeks earlier, and maybe he was struggling more deeply than anyone knew, which of course is possible. But again, where is he?
Yeah.
And another theory suggested that he wandered into the construction zone behind the bar and suffered an accident that was somehow overlooked or even covered up.
Not a bad theory.
Maybe, he did get injured there, maybe he passed away there, and then I mean, I don't really go to many construction sites, but I don't know if there's a possibility that he ended up in some kind of space that they didn't see him and then they filled it in with like concrete or something, or maybe they were like, "Oh, crap, there's a dead body here. We didn't follow these laws," or
Yeah.
whatever. And so they tried to cover it up. That seems possible, but then when you think that the cadaver dogs had searched that area, I don't think they could cover all of that up.
Yeah, I don't know like how cement traps smells, so
Well, I would think that even if, say, he was encased in cement, like they would be able to still smell that he was there.
okay.
Yeah, and you'd think there would be some sign of like a torn shirt or a shoe or something like that. And then there's another more sensational theory, which is the smiley face killer. So this is an unconfirmed person or persons that some retired detectives believe target college-age men leaving bars, and they're often found near water. So that kind of plays into what the psychic said. Brian does fit the victim profile, but with no body or physical evidence, any connection is just speculation. And really the whole thing is speculation because again, there's no confirmation that the smiley face killer or killers ever existed. This is all just a theory that some retired detectives came up with, which it does have some credibility, but no one has ever been caught or confessed to them, so there's no way to know for sure. Most police departments dismiss the smiley face theory entirely, but then they also attribute many of the cases to accidental drownings, which I mean, how
How
many
many
people
of those?
accidentally drown?
Yeah.
Yeah. So even if that theory were true, again, Brian has never been found. So we just have completely no idea what happened. In 2014, Columbus police said that they were still receiving at least 2 tips a month on the case via the local Crime Stoppers hotline, though none of them had proved useful. Police say that they have 3 different theories about the case, but of course they're not discussing them with the public in any way. In 2018, the Ugly Tuna Saloona closed its doors for good, and the space was going to be turned into an office. Cadaver dogs, of course, searched the property back in 2006 and found no trace, but I don't believe it was searched again when, it was closed down. You would think when the walls come down, because there have been cases where someone will just completely disappear and then they'll be found like 20 years later stuck behind a refrigerator unit or something like that.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I was thinking is that maybe he got in like a weird space somehow and he got stuck. I don't know what the building is like, but you would think in a bar there's not that many places that you could get stuck where someone couldn't hear you like calling for help.
That's what I was just about to say. Like, even if he was stuck, for how long? I mean, he would have to be passed out, not just like, oh, I'm drunk and stuck. Like, you'd wake up.
Yeah, when they're not open and there's just people restocking, it's not super loud, as I would think someone would hear him in that case.
Would he have gotten stuck that someone wouldn't have seen him?
Yeah, again, I've never been there, but it seems unlikely, but it seems like at the same time, where else could he have gone? So it's a really, just really strange situation.
Yeah.
And people were concerned that when they were closing and renovating that were they destroying any last remaining evidence, but it didn't sound like they found anything. Again, it was 20 years ago. It might not have jumped out to someone as it may have, say they found a piece of a shirt or something like that. It might not have jumped out then as it did 20 years ago.
Well, and like you said, it's a college bar. Like, how do you specify, okay, this is a piece of evidence, and this was like Thirsty Thursday?
Yeah, people lose pieces of clothing and stuff all the time. So, and as of today, there are no promising leads, no new clues, no confirmed sightings. Really, there's just theories and Brian's brother and their extended family that are left with questions that may never be answered. And Alexis as well. I mean, this was going to be her husband
Yeah.
potentially, and he just completely disappeared. And because of all this, Brian Shaffer's disappearance remains one of the most baffling cases in recent history. A man was seen entering a bar surrounded by cameras and friends and eyewitnesses, and he just still vanished with no trace, explanation, and no confirmation of what happened to him. Unfortunately, that's all the information we have about Brian, and if you have any information about the disappearance of Brian Shaffer, you can contact Central Ohio Crime Stoppers at 614-645-TIPS, and even the smallest detail could change everything. So if you know anything, really, you could be providing closure for an entire family, and yeah, it's just a really unfortunate, unusual situation in modern times, I feel like, that someone just disappears like this.
But I mean, there is some hope.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible, but you would think 20 years on that he would contact them. I mean, I was just listening to Your Own Backyard podcast, which is really well done if you're interested in the Kristen Smart case and the subsequent trial of Paul Flores and Ruben Flores. One of the theories that people had about Kristen was, oh, she ran away. Kind of a similar situation. She was stressed with school. She wanted a different lifestyle. She was planning on moving to Hawaii, like maybe she's ran away somewhere. And it's like, but would she have not had any contact with her family? And same thing with Brian. Would you have not had any contact with your family in 20 years? His dad passed away. Wouldn't you would think that he would reach out to his brother or someone. You miss so many things being gone for 20 years that it just seems unlikely given that he seemed like he had a good relationship with his family.
Eventually, I feel like in those situations, you kind of make a completely new life for yourself, and that's not you anymore. Somebody that you used to be. So maybe it was like too hard for him to even admit, like, hey, I left you guys terrified for me, and sorry.
Maybe.
I'm hoping he's still alive. This is me just hoping, like, he's still alive somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, there was that case, when was it, earlier this year or last year, where that woman disappeared into Mexico, or she was last seen crossing the border, and everyone was just so worried about her safety, and then she turned out that she was fine, but in the process of that, her dad had died, and a lot of bad stuff had happened, and a lot of resources were used
Yeah.
looking for her. So it is possible, but just for such a long time, it
Yeah.
seems unlikely, unfortunately. I do think it's weird that the one friend wouldn't take the polygraph test.
And that's when polygraphs were still kind of like looked at as believable evidence. I mean, nowadays it's like Maury and Dr. Phil.
Yeah, again, I think it's just a way for them to kind of extract a confession or say, hey, we know you did this, like tell us what happened kind of thing.
Yeah, like make
Um,
you sweat.
but again, it's very weird just given that timeline that he was seen at 1:55 a.m. and then 5 minutes later, Clint and the friend Meredith were outside waiting for him. So you know what I mean? Like, what could he have done to him in 5 minutes that he completely disappeared without a trace?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just a really sad case. I thought it was also interesting they said they were 100% sure he hadn't come down that escalator in like a disguise. I don't know that you could be 100% sure about something like that. I'm no expert in those types of things, but it just seems interesting that they're that certain.
And this has nothing to do with that, but I'm still weirded out that there's an escalator in a bar.
I know
Like
that seems like a very bad decision.
that seems so dangerous. But I
Yeah, it's
mean,
weird setup, definitely.
but you're right. You can't be 100% positive he didn't come out in a costume or a disguise. But then what's going on that he needs to run away?
Yeah, I mean, at least that would provide some type of closure. Facial recognition was different 20 years ago than it is now. So maybe there's
Yeah.
like new tools that could look at those videos and say, well, this could be him. I don't know what kind of disguise you would put on. It's like you can dye your hair that fast, so you'd have to put on like a wig and change your clothes.
Yeah, I mean, it's all just so strange because it doesn't really seem like I mean, there were like stress factors in his life, but it doesn't seem like stress factors enough to like run away.
Yeah, obviously medical school is very difficult. Losing your mom is very difficult. It's maybe not the more common reasons that you hear of people running away and starting a new life, as opposed to like I have $1 million in gambling debt or
Yeah.
something like that where you feel like you have no other option. But he did tell people that his dream was to live somewhere tropical and have a Jimmy Buffett style band. And in that case, you would think that maybe there had been some sightings. I don't know, unless he somehow completely changed his appearance.
Well, I hope he's somewhere on a Margaritaville cruise living his best life.
Yeah, I do hope he's alive, and I hope that he reaches out to his family and his ex-girlfriend, I guess you would say, and
Yeah.
they get some closure at least. I'm sure this weighs very heavily on them, like every holiday, every birthday. This is something that you can't just move on from.
Now, was he declared legally dead? I'm using this solely off of Tiger King, so do not use any of this as like intelligence. But I know that she had her husband declared legally dead after a certain amount of time when there was no like finding him.
It does say that his status is still missing, but it sounds like he was declared legally dead as of 2013. I believe it's usually like 5 years after people go missing, they can be declared legally dead. Yeah, it's just a really sad case, and I feel terrible for his brother.
Yeah, it's just awful.
Yeah, really unusual. They still solve cold cases all the time, so
Yeah, technology is moving so fast that there's still hope.
yeah, so this was definitely a sad case. People have a lot of theories about this case, which is why I wanted to cover it. It's one of those cases that, like many of these unsolved cases, where you only get a snippet of it on like a social media post or something like that. So I think sharing a little bit more just gives people more context, and maybe someone will think of something that they saw 20 years ago at the old Tuna Saloona, which is such a strange name for a
I
bar.
can't stand hearing you say Saluna. I've been trying to hold it in for so long.
Yeah, it doesn't sound right at all. I don't know what they were thinking with that. But if you enjoyed this episode, please give us a like and subscribe and follow and all the things. It helps us boost in the algorithms and we can get the story out to more people. And next week, I think would be one of your episodes, Cassandra.
We're gonna be doing something Christmassy.
Okay. Yeah, I can't believe it's already December. It's crazy.
Oh my gosh, I know.
So, yeah,
So,
something seasonal to look forward to
yeah.
next week.
Normally for Christmas, I just put Santa hats on my Halloween decorations, but I still have like my outside Halloween decorations up.
Yeah, I think you can probably take those down now.
But
Alrighty,
yes,
well, thanks for tuning in this week and stay strange.
stay strange. Bye.